Dad. This is episode 7 of our podcast. So you're watching the NHL last week. So what did you notice?
Yeah, I noticed something, that an unwritten code in the National Hockey League and any league, and this is something for you younger coaches and as you coach younger hockey and everything. The Islanders are winning 3-1. They're winning 3-1, and Nashville come back and scored 7 straight goals. That's unbelievable. And now they're losing 8-3. Now, the Islanders are losing 8-3. And Laviolette did something that, unless somebody was running around, but I don't think so. I don't remember anybody running around. He put on his number one power play. I mean, that is a pretty good power play. They had Duchesne, Forsberg, Johansson, Josie, and Ellis. You don't, late in the game, put on your number one power play when you're pounding the other team 8-3. Now, I remember when I coached the Boston Bruins, I coached the year and all that stuff and everything, but we had the toughest team in the world, maybe the toughest team in any sport. When we get up 5-1, the one thing I would never do, I would never put on the number one power play, because I'll tell you one thing, the other coaches and the other players see that. What are you trying to do is run them down and make them look bad. And I'll tell you, all you do is give ammunition to the other club. Now, they're going to say, I think that it's February 13th, I think is their next game. You do not do things like that, because the other team, the Islanders, will be pumped up sky high, ready to go. You just don't do things like that. Remember that, young coaches. Remember that when you're really beating a team and they're down and like that late in the game, put on your third and fourth line. That's how we had 11, 20 or more goal scorers. You do not do things like that. It's an unwritten rule in hockey. And Barry Trotz, what did he say, Tim? What was it he say about Peter Lafayette?
He was quoted saying it's 8-3 and you're putting your guys on blasting pucks and you're putting guys at risk. That's fine. Everybody has their own way of doing things. I probably wouldn't have done it that way. It tells me a lot about him.
Well, Barry Trotz, he's making $6 million, so he must be doing something, right? He's won the Stanley Cup. He was very kind. I would have said something else. But remember that. You do not, when you're pounding the other club, the other team notices who you put on. And when I coached the Boston Bruins, we get up 5-1. The number one power play would never get on the ice again. That's why we had 11, 20 goal scorers. Remember that. Barry Trotz and the New York Islanders will be sky high February 13th, waiting. Just can hardly wait to play Nashville again.
So the other big news this week, Dad, was Taylor Hall was traded from New Jersey to Arizona.
I remember the very first time I saw Taylor Hall. It was at a Marley tournament. They're having a Marley tournament here, and Kingston came up, and the Marley guy, the head of the tournament, said to me, "Pick the best player." So Kingston got beat 2-0. So for the best player, I picked Taylor Hall, and he come up to me and he's, "What the going on?" He says, "Kingston gets beat. You picked Taylor Hall. He didn't score a goal." I said, "You pick the best player." So the best player, and I think he got 6 goals that afternoon. Taylor Hall, everybody thinks it's a rent, that he's going to go there. I mean, they give up a lot. They give up, when I was Marlies, there was a kid playing for Marlies. They give up Kevin Ball. And I remember I remember watching it one time. They were watching a game, and this little Irish guy back of the net, the other team, he come down 90 miles an hour, and I see Kevin just standing at the blue line. He's about 6'5", and he's just standing there, and the little guy ran into him. So naturally, he falls down and the whole deal. So I'm thinking, holy smokes, the kid's laying there. He looked like he was dead, but he bounced back up. So the referee gives him it to the head and thrown out and the whole deal and everything. So I never ever said anything to referees before. But as they were leaving, I said, "Come on." I said, "The guy's 6'5". He said, "I know, Graves." He said, "What am I supposed to do?" This is the referee talking. "What am I supposed to do?" He says, "The kid's laying there in the ice." I said, "Yeah, but he just stood there." I tell you, they give up a pretty good player in that Kevin Ball. But everybody thinks that Taylor Hall is just a rent a player and that he's going to leave. I don't think so. He's going to get with Rick Tocchet, who I think should be coach of the year this year in the National Hockey League. I think that he'll see how he's traded. Listen, if he can get along with Kessel out there, You can get along with anybody. But I think he's got a nice spot there. They got a winning club. They've got a good club. They're ready to go. And Rick Tockett's a good coach. He knows how to treat it. I think he'll stay there this year. They give up a first-round draft choice. They give up Kevin Ball, some pretty good players. I think they're going to offer some pretty good dough. I think he'll stay in Phoenix.
So, Dad, on Twitter you put out we were going to talk about some questions that the fans can write in, and a couple of the fans wanted.
I think. Didn't
we had over 500 responses, and a few of the people asked to talk about some of your roommates that you've had over the years.
Well, the guy that I was roommate the longest in all my career was Daryl Sly from Collingwood, Ontario. And, this guy could really skate. I mean, the only guy I ever saw that could skate better was, of course, Bobby Orr. And Coffee. But Daryl could skate like anything, But he had a college education. And believe it or not, this is hard to believe, the powers to be in hockey, if you had a college education, you got more money. In fact, I think he got about $15,000. I got I was making $5,200. No, I must tell you a story about that one too as we go along. I remember Jack Riley, the general manager of Rochester, called me in one day halfway through the season. He said, "I'm going to give you $6,000." And I always thought, boy, oh boy, what a guy, giving me an $800 raise. And about 30 years later, I met him, and he says, Don, remember the time I called you in my office and I said I was going to give you $6,000? And I said, yeah, and I always remember that. He said, well, I'm going to tell you the truth. He said, the rookies coming down from Toronto that with the Maple Leafs for make $6,000, there was no way I was going to pay you that've been in the league for 12 or 13 years. I was going to pay you $5,200. Oh, so thank Jack. I appreciated the money. Anyhow, let me tell you about Daryl. He could skate. He could do anything. And what he did was, to save his money, he was a sharp guy. Sylvia, his wife, was a nurse. And she could, everybody wants to work a nurse on. So she worked. They lived on her money. And he banked all his money, all the time, bingo, right in the bank. And when he was through, he went, I remember Chrysler at that time, way back then, was really down. He bought the Chrysler for next to nothing in Collingwood. I think he called it Blue Mountain Chrysler. Anyhow, and then Iacocca, I'm going on and on here, but anyhow, Iacocca straightened out Chrysler, took off, and very, 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 very valuable Blue Mountain, I think they call it Blue Mountain Chrysler.
Blue Mountain Chrysler, yep.
Anyhow, I could always tell if Daryl was coming in late and I was in bed and I was half asleep, I could always tell it was Daryl. You know how I could tell? Because coming down the hall, I'd hear him, and when he coming down the hall, I could hear his ankle crack, crack, crack. Coming down, I just thought of it now. And, one thing about him, when I remember sometimes he used to do this, he stopped it because I told him. I'd be sleeping, and as a joke, he'd get right up close to me and stare, and I'd open up my eyes, and there'd be two eyes looking at me like that. Anyhow, I think he was a pretty good hockey player. Like I said, if he had more desire, and if he had in the National Hockey League, I think he could have been a great hockey player in the National Hockey League. But I must tell you about the time about Daryl and the Frogs. I mean, this is one of the best stories, I think, of all time. So I'm laying in bed, and I don't know, I'm rooming alone. My roommate must have left or something at training camp. And Daryl was rooming alone. All of a sudden, I heard this bang, bang, bang at the door, and I opened the door, and there's Daryl. He's absolutely terrified. Little did I know he was terrified of frogs. Frogs, yeah. And unbelievable. He says, my room is full of frogs, man. I thought, this guy's going insane. So I went and I looked, and sure enough, there's frogs all over the place. And I picked up all the frogs. And I'll tell you how all the frogs got in there a little later. So I picked up all the frogs, put them in a pail. I remember in a pail, there was a ton of them. And he went back in again, and he went back, tried to go to sleep again. And the frogs, naturally dark, they'd jumping all over again. So he slept on the floor in my room. He came back and went in. And what happened is all the guys knew, this is the way they work it in hockey. All the guys knew he was afraid of frogs. I remember they had a few pints. And they said, let's get some frogs late at night. So they got some flashlight. They went to a swamp. And the farmer who owned the land saw all these flashlights in about the swamp. He phones the police. So the police turn up and they tell them what they're doing. So anyhow, they catch all the frogs, and Daryl's out and they let the frogs go in his room. And Daryl comes in late at night, doesn't turn the light on and everything. And that's how all the frogs get in there. I'll tell you one thing. So the next morning, we get all the frogs. I made sure I got all the frogs. Now, we're in my car. Now, we're early in the morning. We're going to drive. We're going to let the frogs go in I guess in Peterborough, there's a little lake in the middle. And now the police see us driving slow. 2 guys in a car early in the morning driving slow. So they follow us around, and we let the frogs go. But I never, ever forgot Daryl absolutely terrified of the frogs. And another roommate I have, I'm not going to say his name, but you know who you are. And if you're listening, and I know you all listen, that I'll tell you one of the greatest stunts ever pulled, that him and another guy, I think we were with the Vancouver at the time. Yeah, we were with the Vancouver. And they had a few pints, as pops, as they say. And they were on a golf course, and they thought, well, they're not walking all the way back to the hotel. They took a golf cart, and they drove down the highway, through the lobby of the hotel, out the lobby, and into the pool. They drove the golf cart into the pool. Now, naturally, they're soaking wet, and there's the golf cart in the bottom of the pool. And naturally, they phoned the police. So he comes to the room, and now he's kind of sobered up, and he gets behind the door, and all of a sudden, a bang, and what the heck's going on? He's all wet and everything, banging at the door, and I open the door, and there's 2 policemen there. Let me tell you, talk about scared. They were like in a movie. They had the jack boots on, they had the sunglasses, the big helmet, the leather gloves, and everything. And there was 2 of them. And I remember he said to me, he said, has anybody been in this room that, and I said, no, nobody. And you could see the water all the way and finally come out. Now, the policeman in the back, the other policeman is laughing because he can hardly keep from breaking up. And they took, I better not say his name. They took my roommate away. And I don't know what happened to him, but Joe Crozier got him out of it and the whole deal. But can you imagine? We walked out, and there's a golf cart at the bottom of the pool. I don't know how we got away with that stuff. Now, another time, same roommate, and you know who you are. You come in late, and I'm sitting in bed reading the paper. I'll never forget I was reading the paper, and it kept going up, hot, hot, hot. And I guess he had a few beers that day. And he says, it's hot in here. And he had a big bay window, right? The big bay window. He says, I'm going to throw a shoe right through that window. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. And he fired the shoe. We were up high. Fired the shoe. The shoe, great big hole in the middle of the window. And I remember the curtains go straight out. And the shoe bounces back. I mean, the all night, we almost froze and thing. Got away. And we got away with it. I don't understand it. Nobody never heard anything about it. But great big hole in the window. But I remember when he was a young guy in junior, and we were in the Westbury. We're in the Westbury. I just thought of it now, the Westbury. And the Westbury is behind the gardens in there, and we were there. And Al Arbor's laying in bed, and he's saying to this guy, and I'm not going to say his name. He's, if you work hard. He says you can become, in the National Hockey League, and you can become the American League. And this guy, I remember, what? Yeah, I'm going to make the National Hockey League. I'll be like you, rolling around blocking shots. No way. Anyhow, and for some reason, they broke a lot of glasses and stuff in the room that day. And so Daryl, he's pretty sharp. He takes off. I stay and clean it up. And guess what? The woman that cleans up is waiting up for me outside. And she's telling, look at this bum. And I'm the guy that's trying to clean it up. But I never forgot this guy, and I hate to say it, and I'm not mentioning his name, but one time I'm fast asleep, and I feel something warm on me, and he's got up, he's had a few beers, and, he's not, and he thinks I'm the toilet. And did I say more? Felt the stuff warm on me like that. I'll tell you, this guy, he was a great guy, and I know he's listening right now. He's laughing. He said, I never forgot to. When we used to go to a bar, he didn't care about money or anything like that. And we'd walk in, and the cheapies there's a lot of cheapies on hockey and that. And he'd throw a $20 bill and he didn't care. He'd just throw a $20 bill. No, that's 4 days. 4 days of money we used to get like that. well, actually 5 days now that I think of it. We usually get $4 a day. And the cheapies in that would point to his 20 to take it out. I used to take care of him that way. And I tell you, he was a great guy. And I'm not going to say anything more because you'll know who it is. But he was a roommate, a young guy, and he straightened out. And right now, he doesn't touch a drop right now. And he goes around, and I guess he goes to colleges and things like that, talk about the evils of drink. I still have a few. Well, I have to talk about and I can name this guy. His name was Ralph Willis. He was my first roommate that I had when I was in Barrie when we won the Memorial Cup. And I remember the first roommate I had, believe it or not, two guys sleeping in a single bed. And I said, I just can't put up with this anymore. So we went. It was Fred Pletch was the other guy. And he had a room by himself, and I slept with Ralph. And the only problem with Ralph is he used to smoke, and he'd read Westerns and Gray. I remember he used to read them all the time, and I'm trying to sleep and everything. But anyhow, we slept good and the whole deal. Till I remember the play, he broke his nose. It was a stick, he broke his nose. And from then on, he snored, which was really tough, but I was happy to be along with him, and it was a lot of fun. And he was a lot of guy. Remember, he had a car, and we went to Hershey. We stayed at a place called the Cocoa Inn in Hershey, my first year pro. And you know what I remember about the first year at Cocoa Inn? I think we paid 15 cents because it was owned by the Hershey Estates. Him and I roomed together in a room. We each had a single bed. I remember a great explosion. We're getting off the topic here. And a house, absolutely, two old people lived in it, and it was a gas leak, and it wasn't far from Cocoa Inn. It absolutely leveled the whole deal. But we stayed at the Cocoa Inn, 15 cents, back in Barrie. I'd like to tell a little story then. One I never forgot. We're back in Barrie. Now, you must remember, we're billeted. I think that's what they call it. Fred Pletch had his room, and Ralph and I had another room. Now, we used to have dinner at 5 o'clock every night. The husband would come home, and the landlady had cooked a duck. And the duck was, I hate to say it, was spoiled. But she'd been with it all day, cooking it all day, and she never noticed because she used to serve great meals and everything. I remember the husband, he tasted it, and he left it, and the two daughters left, and Fred, and just her and I were at the table. And I forced it down. I ate it, and because that's the way it was taught. You never make fun of people or anything like that. And 2 days later, she said, she apologized to me. She says, my husband told me that the duck was spoiled, and my daughters told me, and to think that you stayed there and ate the duck, that just shows you what kind of a guy I am. Yeah, I guess I was stupid. Anyhow, it was a great time. I never forgot that and I call it the deal of the spoiled duck. Now, I'd like to tell you about my very first time away from home. I was like a mama's boy. I never went out. All I did was stay around the house. I remember I painted the house and everything. And nobody from the East, like from Kingston or that, ever made the National Hockey League back in my day. They're all from St. Catharines. There was more players come out of St. Catharines at the time, Ontario. So I remember I took the train from Kingston. I remember my mom crying and everything. I'm going to a Boston rookie camp. And I checked in the Queen's Hotel in Barrie at 11 o'clock at night. The train never got in. It was late o'clock. And he said, well, here's your key, and you have to sleep with somebody. There's 4 to a room. And I never slept with anybody or had never been in a room where 4 guys or anything. So I come in, and I never forgot the guy's name. No, I better not say his name. So he was from Port Dover. And I told him to get over. I mean, it was so embarrassing to tell a guy to get over. And from then on, he seemed to hate me. I don't know if it wasn't my fault. I got in late. I was so homesick. And I'll never forget, he sang a little song. When things get rough, we get tough. We're from Port Dover or something like that. So I was a pretty tough guy. And he was an older guy. And I used to sing that all the time to bug him. So anyhow, I was 16 years old. And Harold Cotton, a lot of people remember Baldy Cotton. They used to call him. He used to be in the hot stove league. He used to talk all the time. Anyhow, he was a chief scout, And I couldn't stand it. I was physically sick. And you see these kids, when they go away to play junior hockey, 16 and 17, I was actually physically sick. And I just grabbed my skates and come home. And I remember I was in the kitchen, and he called, and he said, "We don't know where he is, Mrs. Cherry. He just disappeared." He says, "Well, he grabbed his skates and come home." I never forgot that. It was my first year. The second year, I must talk about sometime. The second year, when I knew I went away, I was still homesick. But when you see all these kids billeting and everything like that, give them a little sympathy, because they're homesick just like I was. You know, Tim, the other roommate I had, I think I was my second year, was Larry the Rock Zidell. Maybe one of the most vicious guys. I think I had every roommate I had was vicious. Now, we heard about this guy. I know he played in the WHL, and him and another guy got into a stick fight. At the end, there was splinters of sticks. I mean, this guy was scary. Larry, it's a funny thing, when he was finished, when he was finished playing hockey, he was a stock guy. He used to make a lot. He made a lot of money. But I remember my very first time, I was on defense with him, and I remember the first guy he cut. No, that's an awful thing to say. Was one of the Hannigans. Now, I don't know if it was Gordy or Ray. It wasn't Pat, but it was one of the Hannigans. I think it was Gordy. So I'm a 20-year-old guy, and I'm sitting and I'm looking at this guy. Believe it or not, he's sitting there. He's cut along his temple, and every time his heartbeat, boom, the blood would come out. Boom, boom. Now, I'm 20 years old. I've never seen anything like this in my life before. And he won't leave the penalty box. He will not leave the penalty box. And I'm sitting there scared, well, not scared, but like, what in the world's going on here? And he's got a cut about 2 inches long, and the blood is pouring out. And his brother comes over to him. He says, "Come on, you got to get in and get stitched up." He says, "Nah, I'm going to kill that guy. I'm going to kill him." It was Larry he was talking about. "I'm going to kill him when I get him." I guess you went. And his brother, I remember his brother saying, "You're not going to kill anybody. You're going to bleed to death." So he left. And I guess he cooled down then, because nobody fooled around with this guy. I mean, this guy was Larry the Rock Zidell. And believe me, when they call him the Rock. And I remember we behind the net, and he said, "Don, we should do this." He called me Don the same way as Gary Bettman. "Don," he says, "here's what we do. Now in football, what they do is they call X and O's." He says, "When you get the puck back of the net, call her X, X." I say, "Okay, Larry." So I went along with it. Oh, and Obie O'Brien, the captain of the team, told me a story that he had to go to a doctor on the road, and Larry liked to have his gloves broken in right. So he's in the doctor's room in the back, and all of a sudden the bottles start bouncing around, and they go out and there's Larry pounding the wall. He says, "I got to break in these gloves. I got to break in these gloves." Listen, I'll tell you, boy, he was a tough guy. I remember one time when I played for Springfield. Now, he's not my roommate anymore because I'm playing for Springfield. A great guy named Pete Conacher, one of the Conacher guys, scored a goal, and it was my fault. And I remember I ran him into the boards after, and Larry came in and cross-checked me, hit me first aid into the boards, and I chased him around. Larry, he couldn't throw him, but boy, was he murdered with that stick. Anyhow, I know I've set it up there. I'd like to hear how quiet. We got a little conversation on the grapevine. I call it the grape. When I was on the grapevine, I call it the grapevine, and now I'm on the grapevine, I call it the grapevine. Anyhow, here's Larry the Rock Zidell. Boy, he was a scary guy.
Roommates, you never let me sleep. You always were up.
I tried, Don. I
was coming in from the bars, and he was going out for a walk. So what's going on here?
I used to get pumped up.
Yeah.
I wanted to win so bad. And it's tough to get unwound. Even walk racehorses. Don't they after the race, they walk the horse?
Well, you're supposed to go out and have a few pints. You never did.
That's where I made my mistake.
Yeah.
I know. The guys would tell me that, hey, you got to have a few beers.
Just a couple.
So we could sleep.
Just a little glow.
But the stuff didn't agree with me.
Listen.
I'd get a headache.
I got a headache after. Now, I used to have that oil treatment you used to put on. That used to bug me. 3 o'clock in the morning, I look up. He's sitting with a towel on his head with oil. What's going on?
Well, I was just restless. Sometimes I'd take a bath, too, or I'd go for a walk.
3 o'clock in the morning, here's a bathtub going, oil treatments and everything. No wonder I didn't make it the NHL.
Don, I tried hard. When you started to complain, I didn't put any lights on. I didn't take a bath. And then you said, he breathes too hard. Kept me up all night, he breathes too hard.
Well, you used to snore pretty good, I'll tell you that.
Well, I didn't know about that.
You remember the time you're waking me up, you want to get in the penalty box parade, right? You want to beat me. Look at this. You're beating me in the 4 o'clock in the morning, you're showing me a paper. You remember that?
I was pumped up, man. Team player.
Imagine rooming with this guy. remember the time Ian Cushnan and I had a great fight in Cleveland. Do you remember that? We wrecked the penalty box. That was a good one.
That was a good one.
And the cops would come over and put a club right on my head. Now, I want to ask you, why did you pick up the penalty box door and throw it out on the ice? Why did you do that?
First, I want to tell them that you're really a good sport, because before you got in a fight, you were like a matchmaker. You say, yeah, you want to go? Okay, let's go. Let's go. All right, let's go.
That's right.
In my day, if I talked to an opponent before I got in a fight, I caught more hell. You were supposed to just walk in there and plant them one.
Yeah.
Okay? All right? So I got a kick out of you kids. Like, I'm older than you. I said, boy, these guys are polite.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. In fact,
We wrecked the penalty box.
Hey, picture this. Picture this right now. We'd go to the penalty box in our day, and they'd have a Pinkerton guard sitting there between the two combatants.
That's right.
Okay? So you'd have a go on the ice, huh? You'd have a go on the ice. Now you go to the penalty box, and you're still steaming, and you're looking across at the guy. You know, you got to get even.
Right.
This poor Pinkerton guard is there, right?
Sit there like this.
Like that. And there's a little, it's like a phone booth.
Yeah.
And there's 3 from one team and 3 players from the other team in this little phone booth. Now the rumble starts, huh? And everybody's fighting. The Pinkerton guard, he's down on the floor, okay? It's so crowded, the hinges come off the door. Hold it. Really, the hinges has come off the door. Now this guy I'm fighting with, I trip over the door that's on the ground and nearly get killed, but I recover, and I'm angry at the door, but I don't want to quit. I said, God damn door. I pick the door up, throw it on the ice, so now I can get back at him, see? All right?
Well, I wondered why you're doing that.
Yeah, a lot of people in the National Hockey League would remember you got in a stick fight with Eddie Shack, and they're both cut. And I could go on and on about that one, but that's what a lot of people would remember that one. That was Larry the Rock Seidel. Hockey players were kind of stupid back in those days. We thought it was very, very funny to put bobby pins in his bag, and his wife was very, very jealous. I don't know why she was jealous of him, but she was beautiful. And she left him. She went back to Montreal. I don't know whatever happened. But another story I have to tell you, we had a goaltender, a backup goaltender. We had 2 goaltenders, and he was a kleptomaniac. The only time I've ever run into anybody that was a kleptomaniac. And when he would be, and when he played junior, he used to steal butter and bread off and he could have had it free, but he used to take it and put it in his room. Anyhow, it was really funny. When he'd leave the practice, everybody would leave the practice. And one day, at the end of the season, Larry's in his apartment, and this guy comes to visit him, and he said, "Oh, that was nice you come to visit him." And as this guy's leaving, he's, "Goodbye, Larry. I'll see you." And he told him where he was going to cross the border. And here he looks out, and here's the guy who's stolen all his patio furniture. Anyhow, he knew he was going to cross the border. He told the guy to stop him then. But I have to tell you a story. I think it tells about why everybody was afraid of Larry the Rock Seidel. Now, this guy was terrific. I'm not going to mention his name. He was a terrific young player. He was going to go to you had to play, back in those days, you had to spend 2 or 3 years, at least 2 years or in the American Hockey League to learn how the pros go. And this guy had a terrific year. He had 37 goals. I'll never forget it. But he to antagonize Larry Seidel, he'd get out the red line, he'd dump it in, he'd say, "Go chase it, Larry. Go chase it, Larry." And I told one of the guys, says, "Leave this guy alone. Don't bug this Seidel guys. Leave him alone." No. So he comes to red lines again, and he said, dumps it again, "Go chase it, Larry." And he takes his stick, I'll never forget it as long as I live, and drives him right in the nose, and the kid goes down. and everybody gathers around. Now, nobody wants to, like all his teammates, because we think the guy is almost dead. And nobody wanted, and Larry skated around the outside of the circle of looking at these guys. You go chase it, Bo. You go chase it, Bo. I never forgot that. The kid was never the same. He never made the National Hockey League. He stayed in the American League like the rest of us. The one thing you never did was bug Larry the Rock Seidel. You know, Tim, when I think of Christmas, and I think of all the times, we always played Christmas Day. We always had Christmas. We had it on Christmas Eve. Everybody else, you'd get your toys before, and Cindy and Tim would always have the toys before. The reason was we always played, like I said, Christmas Day. And you used to have turkey and dressing and cranberries, and I used to love it. And, you know, I was one of those stupid guys that I had to have my steak. So for 10 years, I had a steak while you guys are having all this turkey. And I said, nah, to heck with it. One day, I'm going to have turkey. So this time, I'm going to have the turkey and the dressing. And I remember Rose kept saying, yeah, I think you're eating a little too much. I'm going to have some more. I'm going to have some more. So sure enough, we play that afternoon. And I'm full of turkey and dressing and the whole deal, but I think I can get away with it. And there was this guy that I know we were playing Quebec, and this guy named Guy Rousseau. And he's a little guy. And I knew I should have never gone near him, but what he would do, and they don't do it anymore, but if you ran out to hit him, he would jump, and his behind would hit you cold bang like that. So like a fool, full of turkey, full of dressing, I run out to hit him, and he jumped and hit me right in the stomach. And let's say, folks, I don't know how to say this. I know you're having dinner and that. I was sick on the ice. I'll tell you one thing, from that day on, I never had anything but steak or roast beef day of the game. Well, Tim, it's been 7 weeks, I think, since I was let go. So we say let go, you know, and a lot of people ask me, they say, do you miss it? And I said, well, you do something for close to 40 years. I mean, I thought I was going to go on for everything. You know, it was fun this year. I was on a roll. I mean, I really felt good this year. I was on a roll, and to be honest with you, you know, I do miss it on Saturdays night. I missed a lot of people down there. I missed Sully, which was the cameraman. We used to sit there after and work on it, and we looked pretty good. I missed Andrew, the lighting guy. I think Barbara Walters said it best, and she says, "I'll last as long as the lighting guy is good." Andrew did a good job. He learned from Tony. Kathy used to do Coach's Corner. I don't know what I'd do without her. And Kevin, the floor director. I mean, Stanley, the stat guy, and you know, listen. A lot of people. I used to say Gillen the Lily with Leanne, the makeup. Though I do miss. I have a lot of fun. I Sportsnet and you know Hockey Night in Canada. A lot of people think, "Are you bitter?" And I'm not bitter. It was time to go, 35 or 38 years, however it was. They did their thing, and I had to do my thing. I have no, I'm not bitter about the whole thing at all. It's time to go, and but I do miss it.
So, Dad, one thing we decided to do, we're going to start taking questions from all the Twitter followers and people on Facebook.
Now, here we have 500 people wrote in questions. I would like to answer them all. I've answered a few of them coming up, but 500. And what do you say? You say 500,000 people have listened to this broadcast?
We've had 500,000 downloads. So what we're going to do is Thursdays, we're going to put up a new podcast every Thursday, and we're just going to be asking or answering questions from the audience. So look for that from Thursday.
And I'll be great.